At his wife's funeral, Daniel Harrington thought the worst day of his life was behind him, until the family maid pressed a small box into his hand and whispered, "You'll understand." What was inside that box would change everything he thought he knew about his marriage and his wife's death. Rain whispered across the cemetery as Daniel Harrington stood at his wife's graveside, the drizzle soaking into his tailored coat. The pastor's voice faded into the background when Ruth Carter, his housekeeper of 15 years, stepped forward. Her gloved hands, damp from the weather, pressed a small plain box into his palm. "Keep it, sir," she murmured. "When you open it, you'll understand." The words unsettled him, her steady gaze even more so. "Ruth, this is my wife's funeral," he began, but she cut him off. "It's not what you think, but it's something you need to know." The box felt impossibly light, yet Daniel's grip tightened as though it were a weapon. Before he could question her further, she retreated into the line of staff, vanishing among black coats and bowed heads. When the first shovel of dirt hit the mahogany casket, the sound was hollow, but the weight in his chest was heavier still. Without waiting for the final prayer, Daniel turned on his heel, the edges of the box biting into his hand as he strode toward the black sedan. Inside, the ride to the city blurred past, wet streets, muted lights, and a growing fury at Ruth's audacity. By the time the car slid into the Harrington Towers garage, he didn't know what unnerved him more: the intrusion at such a moment, or the gnawing need to know what the box contained. Inside the penthouse, the skyline stretched beyond rain-streaked glass, glowing in patches through the storm. Daniel tossed his coat aside and set the box on the glass coffee table, its plain, damp cardboard jarring against the curated perfection of the room. His phone buzzed, Ellen asking him to call, but he ignored it. He considered tearing the box open immediately, but hesitated. He wanted Ruth there when he did to answer for whatever this was. Footsteps sounded from the hall, but it was only Maria, the evening maid. "Ruth says she's taking the rest of the week off," she reported. No explanation. That, more than the box itself, deepened the unease in Daniel's gut. Alone again, he finally opened the cardboard to reveal a cedar case with a brass latch. Inside, tied with a blue ribbon, was a stack of folded pages. On the top sheet, in unmistakable handwriting, were 4 words: "I hope you'll forgive me." The loops and curves of the pen belonged to Laura, his late wife. Daniel's breath caught. The letter began, "Daniel, there are things I never told you, things I thought I could carry to my grave." His pulse quickened as he read on, each line promising truths he might wish he'd never know. Laura's words unfolded like a confession from beyond the grave. Before their marriage, she had loved another man, a youthful mistake she thought she'd left behind. But 2 months ago, she'd seen him again at a charity event. One meeting became 2, then more. "Closure doesn't meet in hotel rooms," she wrote. The admission burned in Daniel's hands. But then the tone shifted. The man began asking for money, first under the guise of hardship, then with veiled threats. He claimed to have kept everything: messages, photos, proof. $10,000 every 5 days, or he would ruin not only her, but Daniel too. She paid him, believing it would end, but the demands grew. He began speaking of wanting her back. Daniel dropped the letter, pacing to the window. The rain outside lashed against the glass as if echoing his rage. Picking up the pages again, he read Laura's attempt to end it, one final payment, and then she'd never see him again. But he laughed at her, threatened to visit their apartment while Daniel was away. The date matched the week Daniel had been in London. Laura described the night in painstaking detail, how she tried to keep him out but eventually let him in, hoping to talk sense into him. At first, he was calm, reminiscing about the past. Then his demeanor shifted. "You've always been mine," he said, grabbing her hand. She pulled away. His voice grew louder, desperate. The letter ended mid-sentence, the final words smudged as if her pen had been yanked away. The abrupt stop made Daniel's blood run cold. If she had been terrified enough to write this, why hadn't she told him outright? Why leave it with Ruth? He called her, but every attempt went to voicemail. Maria appeared again. Ruth wasn't at her apartment. A neighbor had seen her leave early that morning with a packed bag. Daniel's mind churned. Was she protecting him or herself? That's when he noticed a small, folded slip beneath the cedar case. Ruth's handwriting was neat, deliberate. "There's more you need to hear, but not from me. Meet me tomorrow, 4 p.m., Battery Park. Come alone." The next day, wind off the Hudson cut through Daniel's overcoat as he crossed Battery Park. Ruth sat on a bench, gloved hands clasped, staring toward the Statue of Liberty. "You came alone," she said without looking at him. "You didn't give me much choice," Daniel replied, holding up the unfinished letter. "It ends here. What happened next?" Ruth took a long breath, still gazing at the water. "I was in the kitchen that night. She didn't know I was there. I heard shouting. By the time I reached the living room," her voice faltered. Finally, she met his eyes. He had his hands around her throat. She was fighting, but he was bigger, stronger. Before I could call for help, she stopped moving. He ran out the service door. The image hit Daniel like a physical blow. Ruth said she found the letter the next day and didn't go to the police because Laura had once asked her if anything ever happened to make sure Daniel heard it from her first. "She loved you," Ruth said quietly. But the truth, it isn't gentle." Long after Ruth left, Daniel remained by the water, the letter heavy in his pocket, the truth heavier still. Laura had lied, betrayed, and concealed, but she had also tried, too late, to shield him from the man who destroyed her. Back in the penthouse, Daniel placed the cedar case on the mantel beside their wedding photo. For the first time, he didn't feel the urge to open it again. Some truths, once heard, didn't need to be relived. He poured himself a drink, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, her killer walked free, but not for long. The next morning, Daniel gathered everything: the letter, Ruth's statement, the box. He contacted the police, ready to hand over every piece of evidence. It wouldn't bring Laura back, but it might bring justice. As he spoke to the detective, his mind played over Ruth's description, the abrupt end to the letter, the man's threats. Whoever he was, Daniel would see to it that his life was over in the only way the law allowed. For years, Daniel had believed control was his greatest strength. Now he realized that truth, even when it shattered everything, was the only thing that could set him free. That night the city glowed with a strange stillness. Rain had passed, leaving streets slick and glistening under the lights. Daniel stood at the window, drink in hand, thinking of Laura, not the betrayal, not the lies, but the woman he had loved and the tangled mess she had tried to protect him from. "Rest now, Laura," he murmured. "I'll finish this." In the quiet, the city felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next chapter. And Daniel Harrington was ready to write it. And so the truth finally came into the light, not gentle, not forgiving, but undeniable. Daniel Harrington had lost his wife, but not the fight for justice. If this story kept you listening until the very end, tap that like button and share it so others can hear it too. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you found a letter like this? And don't forget to subscribe for more gripping, true-to-life stories that will keep you hooked from the first word to the last.